Okay, so this week we are going to move away from the cups and chips and move more to algebra. It says we've worked well with cups and chips, which we have. I looked at your quiz, and a lot of you do understand what's going on. Unfortunately, you have to let go of this process for the rest of your math careers. It is just used to help us think through the problems, not so much to actually solve them. But what that means for you and those of you who did well is that algebraically you understand how to solve. So take that confidence with you as we go forward, because that's usually the biggest issue with solving. As I've taught, again, I've taught for 15 years, and the biggest problem that most students have is that they don't know how to solve, or they don't have confidence in solving. But if you did cups and chips, especially up to the chips on both or cups on both sides, then you are pretty much set, except for just kind of seeing it, learning it, and applying it. So again, your brains are strong enough to do this. Just make sure you keep in mind that you have to make your decisions based off of what you know to do and what you see. So listen to these explanations real fast and work through the worksheet with me after or this is for your participation grade. Afterwards, you're going to complete the worksheet on your own and do Math XL as an exit pass. So let me explain this again. The worksheet that you have in front of you right now is your participation grade. I'm going to be walking around, we'll be walking around checking to make sure you're doing that right. Ask questions if you have anything on that. But your Math XL is your exit pass. So what that means is, for those of you who just like to type in the answers on Math XL, don't do that, because you're not going to get any points on your quiz at the end of the day. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at your exit pass, make sure your work is official, and as long as your work is official, you get your points for the quiz. So it's a pretty easy thing for you as long as you're doing it right. So again, when you get to Math XL, some of you will only get to 5 questions. Some of you, because you're fast at this, might get to 15, 20, who knows. But use that and make sure you are showing your work and handing it in with your name on it. I'll get that back to you the next day so you can use that as extra notes or anything else that you need. But other than that, looking at this problem here, what some people tend to do, because we're not doing cups and chips anymore, and because they want to make sure they keep the sides separated, and you can do this if you want, you don't have to do this. I'm just going to do it on I'm going to do it on all these, because we are kind of getting away from cups and chips, is they like to draw a line through the equal sign. Again, you don't have to do this, but what this does for us is it gives us the visual of, here's what I'm trying to get alone, here is what's with it. And so if you remember before, that was a cup and then 7 positives, and what we remember was that in order to get rid of 7 positives, we had to add 7 negatives. And so kind of moving forward, if you have x plus 7, you want to move a positive 7, you'll simply add a negative 7, not just to the left, but to both sides. And what happened, remember, is when 7 positives met 7 negatives, they canceled out. And that's just a lot faster for us now, because they do still go away. 7 pluses, 7 minuses, they go away. What comes down is my x. The equal sign stays equal. And then you have 11 minus 7, which is 4. Now I'm going to make sure you do this right by putting the calculator in front of you, because you can do that. But I purposefully put the calculator on this screen, because some of you get calculators like this and you hit clear and nothing happens. That's because this is a graphing calculator, and here is a graphing mode. The easiest way to get out of this is, if you look above the word mode, you see the word quit, and notice that quit is in blue. So if you do that, you'll hit second mode and it goes back to where it should. Now, just for the sake of showing you, you can take your calculator real fast and hit the Y equals button, which is right up here, and that's how you get to that menu. And then again, if you want to get out of it, you hit second quit to get out of that part there. So if you ever end up in that part of there anywhere weird and clear isn't doing its job, just make sure you hit the quit key for that. But what I was going to say is, if you're going to type this in, anytime you're subtracting 7, just hit 11 minus 7, which tells me that my answer is x equals 4. Number 2, as we begin to speed up just a little bit, again, what you might want to do, again, if you're still kind of liking the cups and chips and the wall, here's my wall, which means that 6 is not a factor. Who is with the x is the positive 4. And so in order to move the positive 4, we have to add a negative 4. Again, this represents 4 positives, so we need to show or add 4 negatives. So we add 4 negatives to the right side. We add 4 negatives to the left side. We know that 6 minus 4 is 2 equals x here, which is your answer. So again, it's not that bad of a shift. You just have to make sure you know how to get the answers to what you're doing. And it's kind of like what I see on 3. Again, use this, Draw your wall. X is over here, 5 is here. We want to get rid of the 5 because again this is what's on the same side as the cup, so we want to move these 5 positives, and the way we move these 5 positives is by adding 5 negatives. But if you add 5 negatives here, you must add 5 negatives there. Keeping in mind again, by the way, those canceled, so I should have circled those. But keeping in mind that those are 2 negatives and 5 negatives. If you still are not used to that, keep in mind that negatives work together. They're all friends. So 2 negatives and 5 negatives are not going to cancel. They're just going to work together. So we should end up with 7 negatives. Again, 2 negative signs, 5 negative signs would make 7 negative signs. You've got to get faster at doing your work here in your head, although I will show you how to do this in your calculator. The only negative signs are in front, so you would type -2, but I would hit -5, and you might want to do that for yourself just to make sure. Again, that's a -2 minus 5, or you could do -2 plus -5. Either one of those two works as long as you make sure you get a system to where you get the right answer here. I will allow you to have calculators, but I just need you to start trying to think through that, because if you're not getting good at figuring that part out, you're going to have a tough time with algebra for a long time until you actually get used to it. Looking at number 4, again, drawing that line. The number with the cup or with X is 6, +6. We have 6 positives, so in order to get rid of 6 positives, we must add 6 negatives. These two things cancel just like those two things canceled. Sorry, I'm forgetting all about that. The X comes down, equal stays equal. Again, if you had 8 negatives and 6 negatives, then they should work together because nothing would cancel. We should end up with 14 negatives. But whatever it is, take your calculator and practice doing this because you need to make sure you know how to do it. You could either do -8 minus 6, or you could do -8 plus -6. Either one of those two will get you a -14 and get you your right answer. Just make sure you're practicing. Keep in mind, you're going to have to be able to do this on your own. You do have a quiz on Thursday, so you want to learn this stuff pretty quickly. X plus 4 equals 2. Again, draw your line if you have to. The number with the X is +4. In order to get rid of a +4, we will add a -4 to both sides. And again, this will go away. X comes down, just like we draw a line before between those two. X comes down, equals comes down. 2 minus 4. There are more negatives, so it should be negative. But again, 2 minus 4, the negatives win by 2, which should mean that it's -2. Whenever you have a number like that, again, if it's positives and negatives, I just think how many more negatives do we have, and we have 2 more negatives. But again, if you're not ready for that yet, just type in what you see. 2 minus 4 equals, or you could go 2 plus -4 equals. Whatever your style is, learn it now, because if it's great that you can show the work, but if you don't know how to get that number the right way, it's not going to work out for you. Number 6, draw the line. X plus 8 equals 1. Move the 8 by subtracting 8 from both sides. This goes away. X comes down. 1 minus 8. These are opposite signs, and there are 7 more negatives, which means I should get -7. But again, 1 minus 8 gives you one way. 1 plus -8 gives you the other way. Just make sure you practice doing that for yourself so you know what's going on. The next 3 are subtraction questions. X minus 2 equals -4. Again, if you have to, draw a line. You don't have to draw a line, but like I said, I'm doing this because we're kind of transitioning from cups and chips. Here, you want to move the -2 away from X, and so the way you move a -2 is by adding 2 to both sides, adding 2 positives to both sides. Again, that will go away because they're opposite. X comes down, equaling. Here you have -4 plus 2. You have opposite signs, and you have 2 more negatives again, so it should be -2, or again you can do your -4 plus 2 right there and see it that way. There is no secondary way to write that, because remember, if it starts with a negative sign, then that's actually a negative, not a minus, so it would not work. Looking at number 8, draw your line. X is over here with -10. If you want to move -10, we must add a +10 to both sides. This is going to go away because they're opposites. 3 and 10 make 13. I don't think we need to check that. Equaling X. Looking at number 9, drawing our line for our wall if that's what you're going to do. The thing with the x is the -3. The way we move a -3 is with a +3. Again, this represents 3 negatives, so we would add 3 positives to both sides. This will go away. X comes down with, well, if you have -1 and +3, who wins this is the positives, and there are 2 more positives, which means you should end up with 2. If you're unsure, type in -1 plus 3 to get the answer of 2. And I know that you might be thinking, well, I don't really care about the calculator, but just keep in mind, if you are not able to do this in your head correctly 100% of the time, when you take that quiz on Thursday, if you are getting the wrong answer, then it's the wrong answer. There's nothing I can do if you're missing it just because you don't know how to find the answer in your calculator. So make sure that you are thinking about that and practicing that while you do your work today. Actually, you'll get a pretty good read today whenever we come around to check it, but try to get better. This is actually where we start to lose kids. Typically, chapter 1 is a tough chapter because of the order of operations and all the stuff going on, and so the kids kind of move together, and we move together as a group with some getting it, some not getting it. But once we get to chapter 2, what happens is you have kids that listen to me and they go this way, and you have kids that don't listen to me and they go this way, and for the whole rest of the year, those two become separate levels of kids. I have kids that, yeah, they struggle, but because they're listening to what I ask them to do, they eventually get it and they do well in this class. And then you have the kids who just say, you know what, I'm going to do it my way. I don't really want to do the worksheet. I want to go straight to the computer and other things like that. And they end up having a tough year because if you are not listening to my instructions, then you're probably going to have a hard time getting the right grade. But anyway, back to this. Number 10. These are the multiplication questions. And what we learned in the multiplication questions, that this was like 3 cups lining up with 9 things. And what we learned to do is whenever you have multiplication, that we undid it by dividing both sides. But make sure you look, because again, this is what I'm going to be checking this Thursday. This is where you separate yourself. Either you're going to do it my way or you're going to do it your way and run the risk of missing a lot of points. You're not going to win it by doing it your way, so make sure you're catching on. Again, here, whenever you want to get rid of a 3 that's multiplied, you simply divide both sides by 3. And remember, the way we show division is with a slash. 3 over 3, 3 divided by 3, if you did that in your calculator, notice is 1, which means that we actually made it go away. So what happens is when you have a 3 on top and bottom, they cancel, so you can draw a line through those. X comes down, 9 divided by 3 is 3. And again, yes, you could do that line if you wanted to, but bottom line there is that if you want to get rid of a 3 that is directly attached, you simply divide it. Easiest way for me to think about it is that if I had something like 4x and those two were attached, that's the only way I can get that 4 off of that x is to literally tear that 4 off of that x. And so that is your idea of dividing. Anytime the two things are attached, just pull that other number off by dividing it, and that is how you're going to treat it. So looking at number 11, again, if you want to draw that line, that's fine. Notice that we have a 5 directly attached to x through multiplication, so we will divide that 5 by drawing a line under it, because we want to get rid of that 5 here, which means we divide by 5 here. Keeping in mind, again, 5 over 5 cancels, giving us x on this side. 35 divided by 5 is 7, which means that our answer is x equals 7. Looking at number 12, same thing. Here's our situation. We have the cups by themselves. We want to get the 2 off of the x, and the way you get the 2 off of the x if it's directly attached is you divide by 2. The 2 over 2 goes away, leaving us just x equals. Keep in mind, this is 14 negatives being cut in half, which means that just like when we had our parts, if you had 14 negatives, everybody got negatives. There are no positives here, so 14 negatives cut in half gives us -7. That should be what you end up with. Just like here you had 35 positives separated into 5, everybody got 7 positives. Here you had 9 positive divided into groups of 3, everybody got 3 positives. Same thing, 14 negatives cut in half should be 7 negatives. And that kind of takes the guesswork out of your negative positive stuff, because you'll be dividing by positives every time when you solve, if you follow me the right way. 13 represents something we've never seen, but again, everything that is a cousin, addition and subtraction are cousins, multiplication, division are cousins. You use the opposite to get rid of it. Keep in mind that we got rid of addition, a positive 2, by adding negative 2. We got rid of a negative 2 by adding positive 2. We got rid of 2 times x by dividing by 2. Here, this is a division, so it's divided by 3. And so what I'm going to teach you to do, again, you want to make sure you catch on to this. Anytime you have a number on the bottom, a fraction that you want to get rid of where the number is on the bottom, simply multiply both sides by that number. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 3. Keep in mind, and this is what your work should show whenever you do it, that you are multiplying this top part by 3, which makes 3x over 3 equals 21. Look here and see that you have 3 over 3, which means that those go away, which means that x equals 21. And that is your answer. Again, you can draw that line down the middle if you want. But the bottom line there is, if you want to get rid of a number on the bottom, multiply the same number to the top, because if you remember, what we just saw is that that number always cancels out in the end. Look at 14. Again, you can draw that line if you'd like to. I see a number on the bottom. I want to add that number to the top, so what I do is I multiply both sides by that number. Parentheses 6 means multiply by 6, so 6 times 4 becomes 24 equals 6x over 6. Our two 6's go away, and 24 equals x would be our answer. Alright, so it's not that bad. It's just some stuff you have to teach yourself what to do. 4 choices is what you're basing everything off of. Here, again, here's our x. It's over a 2. We want to get rid of that 2, so we want to add a 2 to the top of that fraction. So we multiply both of those numbers by 2. This becomes negative 10 equals 2x over 2. These two 2's cancel out, giving us negative 10 equals x. 16, follow the same thing. It's really not that bad. It's just it's a beginning of a two-step equation. But again, the first thing you will want to do, and I will teach it forever this way because that's what I use to get my math degree, get rid of the fraction first. So we're going to get rid of this 3 by multiplying both sides by 3. We don't like fractions. I'm sure I know I don't like fractions. I'm sure a lot of you do not. So what I do is I get rid of the fraction first by multiplying by 3. Watch what happens. You end up with 3 times 2, which is 6 over 3x equals 24. 6 divided by 3 is the same as 2x equals 24. And now what we have is 2 times x, and again you want to rip this 2 off of the x, and so that means you divide both sides by 2, getting x equals 12. So again, notice the first thing you do is multiply by what's on the bottom. That 3 times 2 turns into 6. You get your 24. 6 divided by 3 will always cancel to make a number which is 2, and then in order to get that 2 off of the x, we divided both sides by 2 to get 12. It does not matter. It's the 4 decisions that you have, which we'll talk about right before you move on. Here, you have 1/4 x equals 3. Again, you can draw that line if you want. I would always get rid of the fraction first, so I will multiply everything by 4, because that's what's on the bottom. This becomes 4 times 1, which is 4 over 4x equals 3. 4 over 4, notice that's the same number. It's going to cancel out, getting x equals 3. Fractions will no longer be an issue for you, because in solving I am going to show you every time how to get rid of fractions so you never have to deal with them. That does not mean that you don't have to know how to add and subtract and multiply and divide them, but I am just telling you that I got a math degree and never had to solve an equation with a fraction in it ever. So I'm going to show you how to get rid of them. It just makes life easier that way. Here again you have 9 equals 3 over 2x. This is what's attached to x. I don't like the fraction, so I'm going to multiply everything by 2 because that's what's on the bottom. Here you get 18. 2 times 3 makes 6 over 2x. 6 divided by 2 actually does work to make 3. And now you have your 3 attached to x, which we want to get rid of. Remember, you got to rip this 3 off of the x, so you divide by 3, getting 6 equals x. Alright, now before you move on, you might want to write down what your 4 choices are. Again, you have the questions where you have x plus something, where you will subtract. That's choice number 1, where because that's a positive 2, you will subtract 2. Choice number 2 is where you have something like x minus something equals a number. And again, I'm just making random numbers, but in this case, the 2 is with the x, and so you will add that to both sides. That is your second choice. The third choice goes back to the one where you have 5 times a number equals a number. And I'm going to write this down here so you can actually see it. And if you're doing it that way, you might want to, but this is where you divide by that number. Again, that is your third choice. And then your last choice is to where you have x over a number. And what you will do there is multiply. So those are the only 4 choices you're thinking about. If you see it added, subtract it. If you see it subtracted, add it. If you want to get rid of a number that's directly attached, you divide. If you want to get rid of a number on the bottom, you multiply. That's really all that this whole week, actually, is really all this unit is about. The only thing we're going to do is add in some things that confuse you a little bit. So go ahead and get to work on finishing this worksheet. And good luck. Again, after you finish the worksheet, let us check it. That is your participation grade. If you get to Math XL, which if you don't, that's fine. You just got to work as hard as you can. But if you get to Math XL, remember to put that work on paper, because if you get to Math XL and you do not put it on paper, then you are going to lose points for the day. So go ahead and knock that out. Keep in mind you are working alone. The reason you're working alone is because you need to think about this for yourself, not with somebody else. We will work together at some point, but I need to get you ready for this quiz. Good luck.